From billion-dollar floods to record heat, the cost of climate disasters is exploding. Coming up, we expose why the world is still missing its sustainability targets and who's paying the price.
My son was calling me, my kids were calling, "Dad, get out of there, get out of there."
Also, remember when Trump's team sidelined and fired climate scientists?
Their research being squashed.
We track the fallout.
The climate denier as a president, our work to combat the deep inequalities at the heart of the climate crisis is more important than ever.
You're stuck in an elevator with Donald Trump and you have his heir. What do you tell him about what he's doing?
I don't know if it would make a difference.
Plus, deep in the forests of Borneo, orangutans are vanishing. Is anyone doing enough to save them?
Are we just slowing down the inevitable?
The inevitable has to be that we save the species.
It's the fight for our future. The facts, the fallout, the fury. Just 2 degrees is on. Now.
We will not accept any other future than that.
So, predictions for the type of year 2025 will be are still being made. One by Swiss Re AG, a reinsurance company, says that global insured losses from climate-related disasters could be as high as $145 billion. Oh, by the way, a reinsurance firm provides insurance to insurance companies. To put the $145 billion into perspective, that's nearly a 6% increase from 2023's $136 billion. And these costs are driven by a number of factors, including increased economic and population growth, urban expansion into disaster-prone areas, and of course, the escalating impact of climate change. And to further clarify what this could look like financially, let's take, for example, the January wildfires in LA, California. Those are estimated to account for a whopping $40 billion of this year's projected losses. It is a significant chunk that highlights how single events can have massive financial repercussions. So what now? Well, seeing how expensive these disasters could be might actually wake us up. It's not just about the weather. It's about where we build, how we prepare, and whether we're actually planning ahead. Smarter cities, tougher infrastructure, better choices. The price tag's telling us it is time to step up. So we just talked about the staggering $145 billion in potential insured losses this year. Well, the El Niño Southern Oscillation, or ENSO, is one of the key drivers of extreme weather events. ENSO is like the Earth's climate seesaw, swinging between El Niño, the warm phase, and La Niña, the cool phase. And here's news. The La Niña phase of this phenomena is officially over. We're now in a neutral phase, which is kind of like the calm between storms. But neutral doesn't mean boring. Scientists actually believe we can swing back to El Niño later this year. And that's likely to bring hotter summers and wetter winters again. When you add human greenhouse gas emissions to the mix, these natural cycles hit harder and more often. And the message is growing louder and clearer. This isn't just a science story or one about the weather. It's a story about humanity. And that's where the Sustainable Development Goals come in, the SDGs. This is the UN's checklist for survival and for progress that doesn't leave anyone or the planet behind. SDGs are basically meant to be our game plan for building a fairer and more sustainable future. There are 17 in total, but let's talk about a few that feel especially urgent right now. How we navigate the threats of global warming depends heavily on scientists and researchers whose findings are meant to help shape critical policy decisions.
But in the US, the Trump administration has fired nearly 400 people who were working on the next national climate assessment, saying it's reevaluating the report's scope. No doubt the decision is problematic. It undermines climate science and leaves Americans more vulnerable to environment disasters. So the National Climate Assessment shows that temperatures in the US have risen faster over the past few decades than at any point in recorded history. What does this actually mean for someone living in, say, Phoenix or Miami? How does it change daily life?
Thank you. And thank you so much for asking. Climate change is already impacting every community in the United States, from extreme heat to devastating floods, supercharged hurricanes, wildfires, like unprecedented wildfires. These extreme weather events are posing direct threats to lives and livelihoods and have had tremendous, significant economic impacts. I think in 2024 alone in the United States, there are over 27 disasters costing more than $1 billion or more, looking at, I think, a total of over $180 billion in just climate-related damages. This report and the conversation around it was going to be the next step in ensuring that we had the appropriate information necessary to create action and to really combat climate change and to create and catalyze change. And this report was incredibly special in that it was helping to create sort of a very critical pathway for a wide range of researchers, all different science disciplines, to come together and to provide the science necessary, the research necessary to help to support solutions to climate change and to strengthen the body of research and evidence necessary for people to make good, smart decisions.
Looking at recent temperature trends and hurricane data, how close are we, would you say, to a point of no return? What does that even look like in practical terms?
We are definitely marching toward very dangerous levels of carbon emissions. I am a hopeful person and believe that there are ways that we can counteract and to slow down this rapidly changing environment, rapidly changing and rapidly increasing carbon intensive environment. There are national country plans that are in place that can help to reduce emissions significantly. We are at the cusp of and presently experiencing tremendous technological leaps that can support in the decarbonization and the transition to a greener, fairer, more just and equitable economy. And so the tools are there, absolutely. And it's just now a matter of ensuring that we are able to deploy them and that investments are made to them and that it's done in a just and equitable way.
So the Trump administration sidelined scientists like you. Does it feel like politics is literally pushing science off a cliff?
It is absolutely, these policies are not helping. We want to make sure that at OXFAM and in our organizations that we work alongside and the communities that we're working alongside and the partners that we have, it's important to remember and to really hone in on the fact that climate disasters don't care who's in the White House. And with a climate denier as a president, our work to combat the deep inequalities at the heart of the climate crisis is more important than ever before. His election is not game over while these policies do not help. And we will continue to fight relentlessly for climate action at every level, local, state, and global.
Ashlee, if you had 10 seconds in an elevator with Donald Trump, what would you say to convince him climate change is real and not just bad weather, as he puts it?
Not a question of if, but when. That an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. And that it is absolutely the smart thing to do. The investment in the short and long term can transform a generation, can transform and create monumental opportunity. But I wouldn't want to be stuck in an elevator with Donald Trump for any amount of time, truth be told.
Katharine, what do you make of the Trump administration's approach to the climate issue?
I have been an author of the U.S. National Climate Assessment under the Bush administration, the Obama administration, the first Trump administration, and the Biden administration. And although climate policy changes with each administration, we have never seen the level of sheer destruction that we're seeing today.
Yeah, the news we're getting is that Donald Trump is just decimating all climate policy, anything that the former president put into place. What's the real reason behind him doing this, you think?
Well, it's not only the policies, it's also the structure that provides information. So we scientists don't design policies. We just give the information that people need to make good policies. So if you make a policy and you don't have all the information, that policy is not going to do what you want it to do. And in the case of the National Climate Assessment, this is the primary source of information on how climate change is affecting food, water, infrastructure, health, and more all across the United States. We already know that climate change is not a future issue. It's affecting us right now today. And if we don't plan for the changes that are already happening, they will harm us. They'll harm us economically. They'll harm us physically. We know that insurance rates are already increasing. Climate change has health risks. It's decreasing water availability in many places. It's making extreme weather events much more dangerous. Hurricanes, wildfires, floods, and heat waves. So without all of this information, people won't be prepared and they won't be safe.
What do you think this is really about, though? Is it about reducing the amount of expenditure the US has, or is it about avoiding accountability?
I would have to go with the second over the first, simply because you're not avoiding expenditure by not becoming climate resilient. The data is very clear that for every dollar you spend on climate resilience, you get $5, $6, $10, even $13 back. The same is true for investment in science, like investment through NASA or through the National Science Foundation. All of that is being canceled too. So it's clear that these motivations are not economic in terms of the benefit for the larger economy of the country. They are to serve a specific agenda, which is that there is a very small number of people who do benefit from these cuts at the expense of everyone else.
Some of your former colleagues described the Trump strategy as silencing the science. Would you agree with that?
Well, there's even a website called Silencing the Science where scientists are telling their stories. So yes, scientists are being dismissed. Scientists are being threatened. Scientists are being told to not do their research anymore, and their funding is being removed for their research. So there are active efforts to decrease the ability of scientists to do their job for the greater good. People who run cancer treatments, people who run the National Weather Service that warns people about tornadoes, people who do very practical things that matter to people's lives are having their funding pulled and their positions terminated.
Do you think that has real life consequences for people in the US and across the world?
So right now, the United States is more polarized than it has ever been since the Civil War in the United States. And this has been true not just this year and last year, it's been true for over 10 years. One of the main things that political scientists identify is the fact that instead of everyone getting their news from their local newspaper and from one main newscaster every evening, everybody is getting their news on their phone from customized sources that basically have an agenda because they're for profit. They want to make money. And so our news sources are also moving further and further apart. So depending on which side of the political spectrum you're on, you're only hearing news from people who already agree with you. So many people are not even hearing about these cuts and about the negative impact it will have on their lives because they don't use the news sources that would tell them.
If you were part of the administration, what would you be fighting the hardest to protect? And would the administration let you?
That is the hardest question because they are dismantling so much. Would you fight for cancer treatments for babies? Would you fight for cures for diseases that researchers had almost discovered? Would you be fighting for the science budget for NASA, which is the premier space organization in the whole world? Or would you be fighting for the National Climate Assessment, which gives people the key information they need to make decisions that will keep them safe? The problem is that there's too much to fight for. And that's the whole point. If there's all of these different things going on, all of these people being fired, all of these programs being terminated, the question is, where do you focus? And this is a question that many philanthropists are asking because they have limited resources. It's a question many universities are asking because they also have limited resources. The federal government plays a huge role in investing taxpayer money back into the country. And this is the biggest reorganization of taxpayer money that I think people have ever seen. And we still don't understand all the ways it will affect us. And if we looked back in 10 years, I think in 10 years, maybe I could answer your question correctly. But right now, it's like you have all these things coming in from every angle. There's an argument for choosing everything.
Based on everything you know of Donald Trump, do you think he believes that climate change is real?
I don't think that most of those people actually have a problem with the actual science, because the science that explains how digging up and burning coal and gas and oil are producing heat trapping gases that are building up in the atmosphere, wrapping an extra blanket around the planet. It's the same science that explains how your stove heats food and how airplanes fly. And I have not met anyone who doesn't think their stoves heat food or that airplanes fly. So it isn't about whether they agree with the science or not. 99.9% of climate denial is about solution aversion. I don't want to fix it. So it's easier to say it's not real than to say it's real and I don't want to fix it.
Katharine, if you had 10 seconds with Donald Trump in an elevator, what would you say to him to convince him that climate change is real?
Well, I thought about this when he was first elected. And when he was first elected, I would have said, you have a unique chance. Do you want to go down in history as the man who saved the United States and to a large extent the world from climate change? Or do you want to go down in history as the next Nero who fiddled while Rome burned, according to legend? That's what I would have said back then. But right now, I don't know if it would make a difference.
What if I told you the ground beneath your feet is more alive than the Amazon? In just 1 teaspoon of healthy soil, there are more living organisms than humans on our planet. That's over 7 billion tiny life forms packed into a space smaller than a cube of sugar. These unsung heroes are called soil microbes, and they are the secret architects of life as we know it. Bacteria, the recyclers, they break down dead matter and feed the plants. Fungi are underground networkers that connect trees and share nutrients across forests. Protozoa are hunters. These microbes keep bacteria populations in check. And let's call archaea the survivors of the lot, as they thrive where almost nothing else can. Without these organisms, no plants, no food, no clean water, no breathable air. These tiny creatures store carbon, filter water, protect plants, and fight climate change every day without asking for anything in return. So next time you step outside, remember, beneath your feet lies a hidden kingdom, smaller than a speck of dust, yet powerful enough to shape the future of our planet. Because in the end, even the tiniest life forms can change everything.
Soil microbes, they're the microscopic life that give this planet a fighting chance. Now, let's go to the great apes that are still being hunted, burned out of their habitat, and sold for profit. Orangutans, brilliant, gentle beings, are vanishing as forests fall and laws fail. I spoke to Ben Callison of the Borneo Orangutan Survival Foundation, who's still fighting for a future the world keeps trying to rip down. I gotta say, I love orangutans, but is it devastating to learn they're being hunted for meat, captured for trade after all the years of awareness? How is this still happening?
Well, there's a global demand for the land that the orangutans live on, and that demand comes from us here in the UK and around the world. And as they lose their habitat, then the justification for trafficking them for pets, for the entertainment industry and other reasons becomes more justified. And that's the problem. I mean, it's just loss of habitat has caused this population to decline 80% over the last 75 years, and it's continuing to decline. And we're doing everything we can to try to reverse that. But we're not yet to that tipping point where we're adding more orangutans back to the population than we're losing.
Are we just slowing down the inevitable?
No, we are slowing it down, but the inevitable has to be that we save the species. We will not accept any other future than that, and we will work every day to make sure that never happens, because we cannot see this species go the way of the mammoth. And we've lost the mammoth, and that's why we made this connection to the mammoth, and the orangutans have a mammoth problem. And they are at that tipping point right now where we could see them disappear or we could save them. And it's not going to be that hard to save them if we can just continue to scale the efforts and work that we're already doing.
We always hear about the palm oil industry driving deforestation. What about the governments? Are they doing anything meaningful to stop this?
Absolutely, yes. I mean, we work very closely with the Indonesian government. They've been a real supporter of the sustainable palm oil initiatives that we help with, and make sure that these local communities have sustainable livelihoods. I mean, we work with 42,000 local villagers and tribes around our areas to make sure that they're supported to not only make sure that they have a good livelihood, but they have a sustainable livelihood. And that's the only way to make sure that you can have long-term protection of these rainforests and this species, is to work with the communities. And we do that. And the Indonesian government has been very good at that as well, in partnership with us.
People, love orangutans. We donate, we adopt them online, we watch their movies. Planet of the Apes comes to mind. Do you think that we as people are doing enough? What do you wish people understood or did more to help you in this fight?
Well, I think the biggest thing is obviously loving this species, but it's about, this is a keystone species. This is the gardeners of the rainforest. And as much as it's about orangutans, it's about their entire ecosystem. So they having a protected population of orangutans means that the 1,400 other species that live in those same rainforests are protected as well. And many of those are threatened or endangered, like the pangolin, like the sun bear. These animals are also being threatened for the same reasons. And so having this healthy population of orangutans is about having a healthy ecosystem. And this ecosystem is vital for our own survival. And I wish people would understand that. Yes, it's geographically half a world away from us, but these are the lungs of the planet. These are the carbon stores of the planet. I mean, what they believe in the peat swamps of Borneo is about 15 times what we use what we emit here in the UK as far as greenhouse emissions. So we've got to preserve these for our global health and our global climate health. And that's going to be so important for us moving forward, because we're reaching a tipping point there that we don't know what that's going to mean if we cross it. And we can't cross it. Otherwise, we're just as in threat as the orangutans are. So our futures are really connected. And I want people to understand that.
Connected indeed. Deforestation is on the rise. Countries like the UK imports from places like Brazil, fueling deforestation. What makes you do this work? What keeps you hopeful that we can save the orangutans?
I'm hopeful because I know that this is a species that we can save. I mean, there's so many threatened species, but this is one that we can save, and we have all of the right elements in place to make sure that we can. It's just it's scaling the solutions we already have, and I think that's what gives us hope. We have slowed it. We have slowed the decline. We've got the right mentalities. We've got the right work in place. But we're not yet to that tipping point where we're adding more back than we're losing. We have 300 orangutans currently in our rescue centers. Most of those are on the track to go back to the wild. We've released over 530 orangutans back. We've seen 30 wild-born babies from those released orangutans. So yeah, it's all the right work. It just needs to be scaled up, and that's where we need people's support.
And that's our show. I'll leave you with this. Just Stop Oil, the British activist group that's known for blocking roads and throwing soup at artwork, says it's stepping back from public disruptions. They say their stance were never about chaos, but about forcing us to rethink what truly matters in a world on fire. Many of their members now face years behind bars under harsh new laws that seem designed to silence them. But as the climate crisis deepens, can we afford to let voices like theirs disappear? And see you next time.